There are calls you never forget, the ones that stick to your insides like tar, no matter how many showers you take, how many shifts you bury under, how much you try to leave them at the station. And then there are the calls that never let you go, the ones that followed you home, that whisper in the dark, that make you check the locks 3 times, even though you know a lock won't stop it. I've been a paramedic for 15 years. Seen it all, or so I thought. Car crashes where the metal tasted blood sweet. Overdoses where the silence was louder than any scream. Domestic disputes that curdled your stomach. The usual kaleidoscope of human misery, accidents, and folly. You build up a shell, you know? A thick, calloused second skin. You have to, or else you break. But that night, the shell didn't just crack. It shattered. It was a Tuesday, late shift, raining. One of those quiet, drizzly nights where the city hums a low, lonely note, and the calls are usually just drunks and the occasional stubbed toe. My partner was Mark, good guy, been on the rig with me for 5 years. We were sipping lukewarm coffee, scrolling through nonsense on our phones, counting down the hours. Then the radio crackled. Ambulance 3 Alpha, Code 3, Unknown Medical, 127 Maple Drive. Stand by for further. Maple Drive. Even the name felt wrong. It wasn't really a drive. More like a forgotten dirt track leading to a cul-de-sac of overgrown, ancient houses on the very edge of the city limits. Places where the map just sort of tapered off into forest. Never a good sign when the dispatcher sounds a little too polite, a little too detached, like they're reading from a script they don't quite believe. Unknown Medical. That's paramedic speak for, we have no idea what's going on. Probably something weird. Good luck. We fired up the engine, lights on. The rain was coming down harder now, streaking the windshield, making the world outside feel blurry, indistinct. As we got closer to Maple Drive, the streetlights thinned out, then vanished entirely. Just the glow of our own flashing lights painting the dripping trees in garish red and white. 127 Maple Drive. It was set back from the road, almost swallowed by the dark. No lights on, not a single window glowing. The yard was a mess of tangled ancient bushes that clawed at the air like skeletal hands. The whole place felt heavy, like the air around it was thicker, older. Mark killed the engine. The only sound was the drumming rain on the roof and the distant, almost imagined hum of the city. We grabbed our bags, the usual trauma kit, the monitor. Stepped out into the deluge. The wind picked up, swirling the rain, chilling us to the bone despite our heavy jackets. As we walked up the crumbling path, I noticed it. A smell. Not the metallic tang of blood, or the sickly sweetness of decay. This was different. Like ozone mixed with something floral, but rotten. Something artificial and deeply unpleasant, like a chemical spill in a forgotten garden. It made the hairs on my arms stand up. You smell that, Mike? Mark's voice was low, cautious. He smelled it too. Good. At least I wasn't losing it already. The front door was slightly ajar, maybe an inch. Just enough to hint at an invitation, or an expulsion. We pushed it open slowly. It groaned, a deep, painful sound. And inside, the darkness was absolute. And the silence. It wasn't just quiet. It was devouring quiet. No hum of electricity. No creak of settling wood. No sound of the rain outside, even though it was pouring. Just a vast, empty void of sound. It felt like the house was holding its breath. We flicked on our tactical flashlights, 2 narrow beams slicing through the oppressive gloom. Dust motes danced in the light, thick in the air, but somehow still. Too still. Hello? Paramedics? Anyone home? My voice sounded weak, swallowed by the silence. No answer. Just the echoing stillness. We swept the living room, then the kitchen. Old, dark furniture, covered in dust sheets, like a house frozen in time. Nothing out of place. Nothing disturbed. No signs of forced entry. No struggle. Just waiting. The smell intensified as we moved deeper into the house. That strange floral rotten ozone mix. It was starting to make my stomach churn. We went upstairs. The air grew colder, like walking into a meat locker, but without the dampness. A dry, chilling cold that seeped into your bones. We found her in the master bedroom. She was sitting bolt upright on the edge of the bed, facing away from the door, towards the window. An older woman, maybe 70 or 80, dressed in a faded nightgown. Her back was perfectly straight, almost rigid. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Mark asked, his voice softer now, tinged with that paramedic caution you use when you're not sure if someone's alive or dead. No response. I moved slowly around to her front, my flashlight beam steady, and then I saw her eyes. They were wide open, not glazed, not staring blankly. They were seeing. They were a pale, watery blue, and they seemed to be fixated on something just beyond the window, outside, in the pouring, inky blackness. And they were moving, just imperceptibly. A tiny, almost imperceptible flicker from side to side, tracking something. Something out there. Her breathing was shallow, almost undetectable. But there. Her pulse was thready, weak, but regular. No obvious injuries. No blood. Nothing. She was just sitting there, like a perfectly preserved statue, yet impossibly alive. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" I tried, gently touching her arm. Her skin was cold. Not dead cold, but like she'd been left out in the snow for hours, and rigid, not stiff with rigor, but incredibly tense. Like every muscle in her body was locked solid. She didn't flinch, didn't react. But her eyes continued their slow, deliberate tracking. Mark was behind me, shining his light around the room. "What the hell is this, Mike? She's alive, but she's not here." As he said it, I felt it. A chill, colder than anything I'd ever experienced, prickle across my skin, from my neck down my spine. It wasn't from the room's temperature. It was like a presence. A distinct, heavy presence that settled over us, making the hair on my arm stand straight up. The air, already still, seemed to thicken, to press down. And then, just at the edge of my vision, at the very periphery of my flashlight beam, I saw it. Or thought I saw it. A ripple, a distortion in the air, just for a split second, near the window the old woman was staring at. Like heat haze, but in a freezing cold room. I snapped my head to look directly at it. Nothing. Just the dripping window pane reflecting our lights. But the old woman's eyes, they continued to track it. Her head didn't move. Her body didn't move. Only her eyes, slowly, deliberately, as if watching something unseen drift across her field of view. And then, something else. A faint, almost imperceptible whisper. It wasn't coming from the old woman. It was everywhere, nowhere. A dry, raspy rustle, like dead leaves skittering across concrete, but in the silence of the bedroom. It wasn't words. It was just sound. A sound that burrowed directly into your ear canal, making you feel itchy, exposed. "Mike," Mark whispered, his face pale in the beam of his own light. Did you hear that?" The fact that he heard it too confirmed my growing terror. The old woman's eyes, still tracking that unseen thing, suddenly snapped. Not quickly, not a startle reflex, but a slow, deliberate turn. And for the first time, they looked directly at me. And in those pale blue depths, I didn't see fear or recognition, or even the blankness of a catatonic state. I saw something else, something ancient, something utterly alien. And in that moment, I knew. That wasn't her looking at me. Not anymore. A cold, creeping dread started to consume me. We weren't just treating a patient. We were in something's presence, and it was observing us. The smell intensified, cloying and sickening, filling my lungs. "We need to get her out of here," I said, my voice barely audible. "Now." We tried to lift her. She was heavier than any human being should be, like she was made of lead. Her rigid posture made it impossible to get a proper hold. Her limbs were locked. We couldn't even bend her knees to get her into a more manageable position. It was like trying to lift a statue. As we struggled, those eyes never left me. They followed my every move, even as I shifted, as I spoke to Mark, as I tried to find a better way to lift this impossible weight. It felt like she, or whatever was behind those eyes, was dissecting me, piece by piece. And then, the whisper returned. Louder now. Not words, just the dry rustling sound, like the house itself was breathing out a sigh of contempt. It came from directly behind me. I spun around, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Nothing. But the moment I turned back, the old woman's head had tilted. Just barely. An impossible subtle shift. And those eyes were still locked onto mine. "Forget the chair," Mark grunted, struggling with her rigid arm. "We carry her. Whatever she is, just get her out." We practically dragged her body stiff as a plank, down the stairs, those terrible eyes fixed on me the whole way. Each step felt like a mile. The cold, the smell, the whisper, the feeling of being watched. It all intensified with every agonizing foot we moved towards the door. It was like fighting against an invisible current that wanted to pull us back, to hold us there forever. When we finally busted through the front door into the pouring rain, it was like breaking the surface of water after being held under too long. I gasped for air, the cold rain feeling like a blessing on my face. The world outside, even in the dark and the storm, felt saner, cleaner. We practically threw her onto the stretcher, struggling to strap down her unnaturally rigid body. As Mark secured her, I glanced back at the house. The front door was still ajar, and in that sliver of darkness, I saw it again. That ripple, that distortion in the air, like something was peering out, watching us. We sped away from Maple Drive, lights flashing, siren wailing. In the back of the ambulance, the old woman lay still, her eyes locked on the ceiling, tracking something I couldn't see. The terrifying silence from the house had been replaced by the roar of the siren, the rumble of the road, and the frantic thump of my own heart against my ribs. But the feeling of being watched, of being followed, didn't go away. At the ER, the doctors were baffled. Every test they ran came back normal. Her vitals were weak, but stable. No stroke, no trauma, no obvious neurological event. They couldn't explain the catatonic state, the rigidity, the bizarre eye movements. They kept her in isolation. I never heard what happened to her. She just vanished from the hospital registry a few days later. No record of discharge, no death certificate. Like she was never there. But I know she was. Because that smell, that ozone, floral, rotten smell, sometimes I still catch a whiff of it on quiet nights. And sometimes, when the light hits just right, or when I wake up in the middle of the night, I see them. Those pale blue eyes. Watching. Tracking. You know, the thing about being a paramedic is you learn to compartmentalize. You handle the trauma. You move on. But some things don't let you move on. That night at 127 Maple Drive, we didn't just pick up a patient. We opened a door to something that shouldn't exist. And I think whatever was watching her, it's still watching. And it's not watching her anymore. It's watching me.